Under the hot sun, a soft cry broke the quiet of the savannah, drawing attention to its source. Carefully, a lone old woman followed the sound through the tall grass, each step making her heart beat faster. When the grass opened, a small, shaking creature appeared, its fur as white as clouds and its eyes full of fear. For a moment, everything felt still as the old woman knelt and slowly reached out a hand, the air heavy with anticipation. What began as an ordinary walk was about to turn into something remarkable. The sun was setting low over the wide savannah, coloring the cracked, dry ground with golden light. In the distance, tall baobab trees stood strong, their thick, twisted branches reaching up to the sky like quiet protectors. At the edge of this empty land, there was a small hut made of mud and straw. The hut leaned a little, as if tired from standing against the hot sun and strong winds for so many years. This little home belonged to Mama Asha, a widow who had lived here alone for a long time. Mama Asha came out of her hut, her back bent slightly from age and hard work. She wore a simple cloth over her shoulders and held a woven basket in her hands, which were rough and wrinkled. Her eyes, full of lines from a life of struggle, looked out across the horizon with quiet determination. The nearby village of Baobab was lively and noisy, very different from Mama Asha's quiet life. She didn't visit the village often. After losing her family during a terrible drought years ago, she chose to live alone. Barefoot, Mama Asha walked slowly over the uneven ground, stopping sometimes to pick up dry branches and twigs to put in her basket. The only sounds were the distant cries of birds and the soft whisper of grass in the breeze, reminding her that some life still thrived in the wilderness. Even though her life was lonely and hard, Mama Asha stayed strong. For a moment, she stood tall, shifting the basket on her hip, and looked back at her small hut, a simple but peaceful place she called home. The morning sun was low in the sky, covering the quiet savannah with a soft, golden light. Mama Asha walked slowly through the open land, her basket already half full of twigs and dry branches. She paused to rest, wiping the sweat from her forehead with the corner of her shawl. That's when she heard a sound. At first, it was faint, barely noticeable over the soft wind. She stopped and tilted her head, listening carefully. Then it came again, a weak, trembling cry, like a baby in trouble. Her heart started to race as she looked around, searching the grass and scattered trees. Holding her walking stick tightly, Mama Asha followed the sound, stepping cautiously over the dry, crackling ground. The cries grew louder, pulling her deeper into the wilderness. She pushed aside a patch of tall grass and stopped suddenly. Lying on the ground was a small, shaking animal. Its fur was white as clouds, standing out brightly against the brown and green of the savannah. The tiny creature trembled, and Mama Asha's breath caught. It was a baby albino baboon. Its wide, scared eyes sparkled with tears. The little baboon let out another soft, helpless cry. Its small hands reached into the air, grasping for something or someone. Mama Asha felt her heart soften. She knelt down slowly, careful not to scare the little animal. "Oh, poor little one," she said gently, her voice calm and kind, like a mother speaking to her child. "Why are you here all alone?" The baby baboon flinched and pulled back into the grass, its tiny body tense with fear. Mama Asha didn't rush. She stayed still and quiet, moving only as softly as a breeze. She held out her hand, palm open, showing she wasn't a threat. "It's okay," she said in a soothing tone. After a moment, the little baboon stopped trembling so much. Its curious eyes studied Mama Asha's face, as if looking for reassurance. Slowly, its small, shaking hand reached out and touched her fingers. A warm smile spread across Mama Asha's face. Carefully, she picked up the delicate creature, holding it gently in her arms. It was so light, its tiny body barely noticeable. Its soft fur felt like silk under her rough hands. She held the baboon close, cradling it as if it were a baby needing comfort. She rocked it softly, her movements tender and calm. "You're safe now," she whispered. The baby baboon nestled in her chest, its cries fading into quiet, tired whimpers. Mama Asha felt a deep warmth inside her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in many years. Balancing her basket on one hip and holding the tiny baboon securely in her arms, Mama Asha started walking back to her hut. As she walked, she spoke gently to the little one, her voice filled with love and hope. "I'll call you Kajani," she said softly. "You'll be my little hope." Time passed, and a small, fragile baboon Mama Asha had saved grew into a lively companion. At first, Kijani was shy and stayed close to Mama Asha. He would hold onto her shawl or sit quietly by her side as she wove baskets. But as days turned into weeks, he became braver. His curious eyes began to explore every part of the hut, and soon, he followed Mama Asha everywhere she went. One cool morning, as Mama Asha went out to collect firewood, Kijani bounced after her with excitement. His white fur shone brightly in the sunlight. He copied her every move, picking up small sticks and carefully placing them in her basket. Mama Asha laughed, her voice ringing through the still savannah. "You're such a smart little helper," she said with a smile, gently patting his soft head. Kijani chirped happily and ran to find more twigs. As months turned into years, Kijani grew big and strong. His slender arms became muscular, and his small body grew tall. Even though he became much larger, Kijani stayed gentle and playful, always careful not to hurt Mama Asha. Kijani quickly became her best helper. He carried heavy bundles of firewood with ease, climbed tall baobab trees to gather sweet fruits, and brought water from the stream in a clay pot, balancing it perfectly. One day, as Mama Asha worked on her baskets, she saw Kijani tying bundles of sticks with a rope. Clapping her hands with joy, Mama Asha said, "Kijani, you've learned so much." Her face lit up with pride. Kijani grinned, holding up the tied bundle with sparkling eyes, proud of his progress. The once quiet hut now felt alive with laughter and energy. Kijani filled every corner with his playful spirit. He loved swinging from the branches of the big tree near their home, his white fur glowing against the green leaves. Often, he would jump down suddenly to surprise Mama Asha. She would pretend to scold him, wagging her finger, but always ended up laughing. Kijani's cleverness amazed her. He seemed to understand not only her words, but also her feelings. When Mama Asha was tired, he would sit beside her, resting his large hand gently on her shoulder, as if to say, "I'm here." On days when sadness crept into her heart, Kijani would make funny faces or tug on her shawl until she smiled again. To Mama Asha, Kijani was more than just an animal. He was her family, her companion, and a light that filled her once lonely life. Their simple life brought her a happiness she hadn't felt in many years. But as Kijani grew, rumors spread in the nearby village. People who saw glimpses of the large white baboon whispered among themselves. "He's too big," some said uneasy. "No animal should grow that large." Others murmured, "It's unnatural. Maybe he's cursed." Mama Asha ignored the gossip. She knew the truth. To her, Kijani wasn't a curse, he was a gift or miracle. Nothing else mattered. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange and purple, Mama Asha watched Kijani swing joyfully from the tree branches. His happiness lit up the twilight. "You're special, Kijani," she said softly, her voice full of love and pride. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Kijani's size and intelligence amazed Mama Asha, but news of the unusual white baboon soon spread throughout the village of Baobab. People talked about his strength, his large size, and even rumors that he could understand human speech. One day, Mama Asha decided to visit the village market. She rarely left her home, but she needed supplies she couldn't gather herself. Kijani walked by her side, carrying a small basket in his strong arms. His tall figure drew attention everywhere he went. As they reached the market, the cheerful sounds of the crowd slowly faded. Villagers turned to stare, and an uneasy silence settled over the area. Mothers held their children close, and men exchanged nervous looks. "Is that the white baboon they're all talking about?" a woman whispered. "It's not normal," another replied, her voice shaky. Kijani noticed the fearful stares and tightened his grip on the basket, lowering his head slightly. Mama Asha touched his arm gently. "Don't worry, Kijani," she said softly. "They just don't understand you." But her comforting words couldn't stop the tension building around them. When Mama Asha approached a fruit stall, the vendor stepped back quickly, his face pale. You can't stay here," he said, his voice trembling. His eyes darted nervously to Kijani. "That thing doesn't belong in the village." Mama Asha frowned and replied firmly, "He's not a thing. This is Kijani. He's part of my family." The vendor shook his head, refusing to look at her. Around them, the whispers grew louder. "It's a bad sign," someone said. "What if it hurts someone?" Kijani shifted uneasily, feeling the fear and distrust in the crowd. His confused eyes turned to Mama Asha, silently asking what to do. "Let's go home," Mama Asha said calmly, though her voice carried a note of sadness. Keeping her head high, she turned and walked away. Kijani followed closely, trying to make himself look smaller. As they left the market, the villagers' murmurs continued. Their whispers soon turned into wild rumors. Some said they had seen Kijani lifting heavy logs as if they weighed nothing. Others claimed they had heard him make sounds like a human speaking. By the end of the week, fear and suspicion had twisted the truth. Some villagers began calling Kijani a wicked spirit or a demon in disguise. "He's too smart for an animal," an elder said. "No creature like that should exist." When the dry season arrived, the savannah baked under the harsh sun. Mama Asha, who had always been strong despite her age, started to grow weaker. At first, it was hard to notice she moved more slowly and needed more rest. But soon, even small tasks like weaving baskets or gathering firewood became too hard for her. One morning, as Kijani carried a bundle of sticks back to their hut, Mama Asha stumbled and dropped her basket. She leaned against a tree, her breathing shallow and heavy. Kijani rushed to her side, gently touching her shoulder. "I'm just tired, Kijani," she said softly, trying to smile through her pain. "I'll be okay." But Kijani could see the truth. Her hands, once steady and strong, now shook. Her steps were slow and unsteady. Over the next few days, Mama Asha stayed inside the hut, too weak to go out. Kijani took over her daily chores. He gathered firewood, brought water from the stream, and even tried to cook, though his big hands struggled with the small tasks. Every evening, he sat by Mama Asha's bedside, his worried eyes watching over her. One night, under a sky full of stars, Mama Asha reached out and took Kijani's hand. Her touch was soft, and her skin felt cool. "You've been so good to me, Kijani," she said in a quiet voice. "I'm so proud of you." Kijani tilted his head, his bright eyes searching hers, as if asking her to explain. He made a soft sound, pleading for answers. "I'm just getting old, my boy," she said with a gentle laugh. "My time is almost over." Kijani shook his head, refusing to accept her words. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead against her hand. He couldn't imagine life without her, the one person who had cared for him, who had shown him love when no one else did. The next morning, Mama Asha's condition worsened. Her breathing was shallow, and her voice was barely a whisper. Kijani stayed by her side, holding her small hand in his large one, as if his presence could give her strength. By midday, Kijani realized he couldn't help her alone. He needed someone who could. Rising to his full height, he looked back at her with concern before stepping outside. Mama Asha gave him a weak smile, her eyes full of love. "Be careful, my boy," she whispered, her voice faint as the wind carried it away. Without hesitation, Kijani sprinted toward the village, desperate to save the only family he had ever known. But as he left, Mama Asha lay back in her bed, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. The small hut grew quiet, with only the soft sound of the wind passing through the open window. Kijani ran toward the village, his strong legs moving quickly. His white fur shone brightly in the sun, making him easy to see as he dashed across the golden grass. As he neared the village, the usual busy sounds of life stopped. A woman carrying vegetables froze, her eyes wide with fear. Children playing with sticks dropped their toys and ran to their homes. "It's the white creature," someone shouted. Kijani slowed down and raised his hands, trying to show he wasn't dangerous. He made soft, pleading noises, hoping the villagers would understand. But all they saw was his large size and unusual color, and fear filled their hearts. "He's here to attack us," a man yelled, grabbing a stick. More villagers came out of their homes to see what was happening. Some picked up sticks, stones, and tools to defend themselves. Kijani stepped back, his hands still raised, but the crowd moved closer, their fear turning into anger. "Get the nets," someone shouted. Before Kijani could react, a thick rope net was thrown over him. He struggled to get free, but more nets came, wrapping around his arms and legs. He let out a loud cry, his voice echoing through the village. "Don't let him escape!" Another man shouted as they tightened the ropes and forced him to the ground. Kijani's golden eyes searched the crowd desperately, looking for someone who might help. For a brief moment, the villagers paused. His cries sounded full of pain and sadness. But their fear was too strong. They tied him tightly and dragged him to an old wooden shed at the edge of the village. Kijani stopped struggling. He lay still, breathing heavily, his eyes filled with sorrow. They locked him inside the shed and hurried away, their whispers fading into the distance. In the dim light of the shed, Kijani sat on the floor, his strong body slumped in defeat. He thought of Mama Asha, her kind smile and gentle voice. He had come to save her, but now he was trapped, unable to help. A single tear rolled down his face as he closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his failure. Outside, the sun sank lower, covering the village in shades of orange and red. The quiet shed stood still, holding Kijani's sadness. Far away, at the little hut on the savannah, Mama Asha waited, and waited, until she could wait no longer. Inside the dark wooden shed, Kijani sat still, his large body leaning against the rough wall. His golden eyes, once full of curiosity, were now dull with sadness. The ropes around him felt heavy, like the weight of his failure. Outside, the villagers gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices filled with fear. Some paced nervously, holding sticks and tools, ready in case Kijani tried to escape. Others whispered about the white demon and what they should do with him. "Why did it come here?" one man asked, gripping a spear tightly. "Maybe it wanted to attack us," another replied, his voice shaking. "No animal should look or act like that. It's unnatural." But not everyone agreed. An older woman, leaning on a walking stick, frowned thoughtfully. "It didn't look dangerous," she said softly. "It seemed scared." Her words were drowned out by louder voices of fear. "We can't risk it," a younger man said firmly. "It's too dangerous to keep it here." Inside the shed, Kijani shifted slightly, testing the ropes around him. They were tight, and every time he moved, they only dug deeper into his fur. He let out a low, sad sound, thinking about Mama Asha. He had left her to find help, but now he was trapped, unable to return. She was alone, and he had failed her. A young boy, curious but cautious, walked quietly toward the shed. He peered through the gaps in the wooden wall, his wide eyes meeting Kijani's. For a moment, they stared at each other. The boy's fear began to fade as he saw the sadness in Kijani's eyes. "It's crying," the boy whispered softly. "What are you doing?" "Stay back," an adult scolded, quickly pulling the boy away. The villagers kept arguing, their voices growing louder. Some wanted to get rid of Kijani, while others hesitated. Finally, the village elder, Meze Baraka, stepped forward. His voice, deep and steady, silenced the crowd. "Enough," he said firmly. "We cannot act out of fear. We need to understand why I came here." The villagers fell quiet, though their uneasy glances at the shed showed they were still afraid. Inside, Kijani could hear their muffled voices, but he didn't understand all their words. His head lowered, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He wasn't scared of them, he was scared for Mama Asha. She needed him, and he had no way to help her. In her small, simple hut, Mama Asha lay still on her bed, her body weak and fragile. The soft, golden light of the setting sun slipped through the cracks in the wooden walls, gently lighting her face. Her breaths were shallow and slow, each one requiring more effort than the last. The hut was quiet, except for the faint sound of the wind outside. Without Kijani, the space felt emptier and colder than ever. Mama Asha's trembling hand reached toward the door, as if hoping he would walk in at any moment. "Kijani," she whispered softly, her voice barely more than a breath. Her tired eyes opened briefly, scanning the room for her dear companion. But he wasn't there. A wave of sadness filled her heart, though she understood why he was gone. She knew Kijani had left to find help, and she was proud of his bravery. But deep down, she also knew the truth. Her time was running out. Her body had grown too weak, and her strength was fading fast. As she lay there, memories of Kijani filled her mind like a gentle dream. She remembered the day she found him, a tiny, frightened creature alone in the wilderness. She thought of his playful ways, his kindness, and how he had brought light into her once lonely life. He had given her something she thought she'd lost forever, love and joy. A soft smile appeared on her lips. "You gave me so much, Kijani," she murmured. "You were my hope, my family." Her hand fell to her side, too weak to stay raised. Her breathing slowed further, each breath lighter and softer than the one before. With a final, gentle sigh, Mama Asha closed her eyes. Her face looked peaceful, as though she had fallen into a deep and restful sleep. The hut became silent, except for the wind's soft whispers, carrying her spirit to the heavens. Far away, locked in the shed, Kijani let out a sorrowful cry. It was as if he could feel the loss deep in his heart. The world around him seemed heavier, colder, and quieter, as though a piece of him had gone silent forever. As the morning sun rose over the village, Kijani sat quietly inside the dark shed. His head hung low, his body tired, but his heart was restless. A deep feeling of worry filled him, as if something terrible had happened. Outside, Meze Baraka, the village elder, stood before the villagers. His calm voice broke the silence. "We cannot let fear guide us. If this creature meant harm, it would have acted already. I believe it came to seek help." The villagers whispered among themselves, guilt mixing with their fear. Meze Baraka's words made them question their actions. Finally, one man nodded. "Maybe we were wrong. Let's release it." A small group of villagers approached the shed, tools in hand. Carefully, they opened the door. Sunlight streamed in, lighting up Kijani's white fur. He blinked, adjusting to the brightness, and looked at them with cautious eyes. One villager stepped forward and cut the ropes. "You can go," he said softly, stepping back nervously. Kijani hesitated for only a second before standing. Without a sound, he bolted out of the shed, his powerful legs carrying him toward the savannah. The villagers watched, frozen, as his large figure disappeared into the distance. "He's going back to her," someone murmured. Kijani ran as fast as he could, his heart pounding. The dry grass brushed against his legs, but he didn't slow down. His mind was filled with thoughts of Mama Asha, her warm smile, her gentle voice. She needed him, and he had to get to her. When Kijani reached the hut, the door was slightly open. He slowed his pace, carefully pushing the door wider. What he saw inside made him stop. Mama Asha lay still on her bed. Her frail hands rested on her chest, and her face looked peaceful, as if she was simply sleeping. But Kijani knew she wasn't asleep. He moved closer, his large frame suddenly feeling small in the quiet room. Kneeling beside her, he gently placed his hand over hers. Her hand was cold. A soft, heartbroken sound escaped him, and his golden eyes filled with tears. Kijani stayed there for a long time, his head bowed as though waiting for her to wake. But she didn't move. Hours later, the villagers arrived, led by Meze Baraka. They entered the hut silently, their steps gentle. When they saw Kijani kneeling beside Mama Asha, their fear turned to sorrow. The elder placed a comforting hand on Kijani's shoulder. "She's gone, my friend," he said softly. Kijani didn't respond. His grief was quiet but overwhelming, a deep sadness that filled the room. The villagers stood nearby, their hearts heavy with regret. They realized they had misjudged him, and their actions had kept him away from the one he loved most. As the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple, Kijani gently carried Mama Asha's body to a spot beneath a large baobab tree near the hut. The villagers followed in silence, offering their quiet support. Together, they buried her in the shade of the tree she had loved. When the last handful of dirt covered the grave, Kijani sat beside it, his large hands resting on the ground. He stared at the mound of earth, his face filled with an emptiness words couldn't describe. The villagers stayed for a while, watching quietly, before leaving him alone. For days after Mama Asha was buried, Kijani stayed by her grave. He didn't move, his large figure sitting quietly under the baobab tree. The villagers kept their distance, but their feelings toward Kijani had changed. Fear was replaced with guilt, sadness, and even respect for the loyal creature who had loved Mama Asha so deeply. In the days that followed, some villagers began to approach him with small gestures of kindness. A woman left a basket of fruit near the grave. Curious children sat nearby, watching him silently as he rested under the tree. Slowly, the villagers' fear melted away, replaced by admiration. One evening, as the sky glowed with shades of orange and gold, Kijani finally stood up. He walked to the edge of the village and sat there, looking out over the open savanna. The villagers saw this as a silent promise. Not that he was leaving, but that he would protect them as he had protected Mama Asha. As days turned into weeks, Kijani began to roam around the outskirts of the village. At first, the villagers were cautious, but they soon noticed he meant no harm. He chased away wild animals that threatened their livestock and even helped them during a dry season by leading them to a hidden water source. "He's not just an animal," a man said to Meze Baraka one evening. "He's one of us now." Meze Baraka nodded as he watched Kijani sitting near Mama Asha's grave, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. He was never a danger, the elder said. He was a blessing. The villagers decided to honor Mama Asha and Kijani by building a small stone marker at her grave. It was a sign of their gratitude for everything she had done for the village and for the gift of Kijani's loyalty and protection. Over time, Kijani became the village's quiet guardian. His presence brought comfort and safety to the people of Baobab Village. To them, Kijani was more than a protector. He was family. So the moral of the story is, if you adopt a giant white baboon, be ready for it to become the village hero while you're stuck eating humble pie.
你看那两个人在干嘛？看我杀他们。
再拉一点，再拉一点。往那倒吗？你干嘛？我操！撞人了！撞人了！你也碰瓷儿呀！非你啊！非你啊！强奸！强奸！我操！小弟们，什么没见？你他妈干嘛？我按电梯呢。
美女，你会游泳吗？
当然不会呀，要不然带个游泳圈干嘛？
那你经历过绝望吗？
没有。
哦，
我让你知道什么叫绝望。
我到那边去丢。
啊，那你小心一点啊。
好。
你干嘛？我操！
准备好没有？准备好了吗？
我操，谁掉的钱包啊？我操，好多钱，你看。